Welcome to the Limit Free Life Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host. I bring you tips, advice, and guest stories about creating work you love. Whatever type of career or business you have or want, I want to help you find more meaning, money, and happiness. Now we are live from Hollywood. Hello, and welcome to the Limit Free Life Show. I'm your host, Michelle Perkins, and I'm here today, very fortunate to have Tony Sweet with me. You can't see him, but he is he's producing the show, and he's going to chat with me a little bit too, which I'm really excited about because I don't usually have time to talk to him. I run in and he's there, and so this will be great. And he's got some really interesting stories to tell about his journey to being the owner of ubngo.com, and that's where we are today. We're broadcasting from ubngo.com. You can find us there on the website on Channel 2. You can also find us on the Limit Free Life Facebook page, streaming live, and on my YouTube channel. So we're here every Wednesday at 1 o'clock to talk about work. We're talking about creating work you love, work that is fulfilling, fun, and financially rewarding, which might mean different things to different people. For some people, that's working for some organization. For other people, that's working on your own as an entrepreneur. And there are all kinds of interesting money conversations that we can have when it comes to talking about work, and we do that as well. So I'm going to start today. Today's a solo show. It's not really a solo show because I have Tony here. I thought it was going to be a solo show, but I'm lucky enough that it won't be actually entirely. But I'm going to talk a little about a few things that I think are important for people to know in order to be successful with what they're doing in their work or business. One of the big things that came up this morning for me was acceptance. So I was doing a workshop this morning for a group of people who are in recovery. They're in an addiction recovery outpatient situation. And it was a lot of, it was really enjoyable to do this workshop, and I gave a lot of thought to it. It was an interesting day because it was very, very rainy, and I drove in. It took me much longer than I planned. It took me longer than my GPS said it would take me. And I got there. I couldn't quite figure out the entrance, and I didn't want to be late, and so I just said, forget it. I'm just going to run around without an umbrella or anything. So it was kind of interesting because I walked in there a sopping wet mess. You can see my hair. It didn't recover. So I just thought, okay, this wasn't the way that I intended for this workshop to start off, or for me to, walk in all wet. And but I was talking to them about acceptance and about where they are in their current situation and how to move forward from that into new careers or work or whatever. And I thought, well, this is fitting. If I'm going to talk to people about acceptance, then I've just been put in a situation where I have to be accepting as well. And so I think it's a really important message for people out there in the work world, whether you're transitioning your career, whether you're a business owner. I think throughout the day, there are so many times where we have to either accept ourselves a little bit more, accept what happens around us a little bit more, accept other people, circumstances, and we can fight it all day long, which is what a lot of us do a lot of the time. But you probably have some experiences where that has not worked all that well. And so to some extent, I'm finding more and more that you want to try to make things as good as possible, right? You want to show up and try to do everything you can to make things work. But when they don't, fighting it is kind of worthless. It's kind of like fighting with your teenager who's crying their head off and trying to rationalize with them. It just doesn't work. So acceptance is my message of the day. I tend to get these messages at some point, usually before I do the show, so it gives me something great to talk about. But so I just want to remind you, if you're out there struggling as a business owner, trying to make everything come together, trying to find new work, trying to figure out what it is you want, there are several areas where acceptance is really important. One of them would be accepting who you are. And I found today in this workshop, it was exactly the same as what I find whenever I work with clients, is trying to help them accept whatever situation they have. So, people have gaps in their employment. They have gaps in their work life. And to just accept that that's the way it is right now. I mean, there's no changing it. It is what it is. Whatever happens in your life, that's what's happened. And you can't, it doesn't do you any good to tell a different story that isn't true. It only really works if you accept what's happened and own it and move forward with that that knowledge that this is what happened. I'm accepting it and I'm moving forward. And a lot of times we carry a lot of baggage about what's happened in the past with us into the future, and it really doesn't help us. Or we agonize over what happened and we don't move at all. And we tend to think other people won't understand. So, I'm not even going to go and look at this job because I'll have to explain this work gap. Much better to keep moving and to accept whatever's happened and to find a way to explain it, and just to be more accepting. And so I just found that to be a really important message. And so whether it was me running around in the rain being late, or whether it's somebody else having a difficult business experience, and Tony actually had an experience that he just told me about that I think is a really super good example of this. So Tony, you want to tell everybody your experience that you just told me?
I got to turn my mic on. Yeah, of course. So, my father was an entrepreneur. He owned a grocery store growing up, and I always found it really fascinating. And I knew eventually I had to open a business on my own, but not. I thought it would be it is a small business, but not as a corporation.
Right.
And so when I first opened my first business several years ago, almost 9 years ago, I went out and I got an investor and a partner. And
how old were you then?
Oh God, I was early 40s.
Okay.
So because I'm 49, so about 41, 42. Okay. But I was still naive because owning a business is a lot more responsibility and a lot more rules and regulations than you would think. It's not just you buy a building or open a building or rent a building, open a store. It's a lot to it.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we were 50-50 partners. We were all excited. I did all the research. I did all the, on equipment and, everything. And he did write the checks, but it wasn't a large amount of money compared to some people.
Right.
So when we first made the decision to do this, it was a 50-50 partnership. Well, we went months and months and months of, getting preparing for the opening and getting everything, websites and location and everything.
Yeah.
And so, but when we finally got to the point where it was ready to open, we went to the lawyer to sign all the paperwork. Well, the first thing is I didn't have a lawyer.
Yeah.
Because I was from Kansas, shake a hand, we're good.
Yeah.
And this person was not. And so when I got there, the lawyer said, well, here, sign the paperwork. And I was like, okay, but I started reading it.
Okay.
Thank
good
God.
for you. I was wondering if
But I still made a bad decision, but it was giving him the 51% of the company. And I asked, I said, what does this mean? Because we're supposed to be 50-50. And she says, well, somebody has to make the decisions. Because if you don't make a decision, if you can't come to a decision between 50-50, then you have to hire an outside party.
Right.
And I said, yeah, but this was her mistake. But I said, what else does that mean? Because I said, it still doesn't feel right to me. My gut does not say, do this. It was saying there's a red flag.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I said, seriously, what can happen down the road? And she said, and my business partner didn't show up, by the way.
Oh, wow. So it's just you and her.
It was just me and he didn't show up. Something came up. Yeah.
Okay.
And she says, well, if 2 years down the road, if he's not happy with the way you're running the company, he could fire you. You'd still have ownership, but you could be fired or released or let go, and he would replace you. And I said, so pretty much I'm an employee. And she said, kind of, but you're still an owner. Well, I reluctantly signed it, and then 2 years later, it happened that way, where I wasn't
Okay.
making any money, any money increase to the business, always something expense came up, and I never saw any profit from that at all. So I end up telling him I'm leaving the company. He ended up
Okay.
buying me out.
Okay.
His tanked,
Wow. Okay.
and I'm still here. So
So you clearly knew how to
I
make the business work, but-
I was the business, and I think
Yeah.
that's what happened was everybody kept saying you're the face of the GVB or the company that I had,
Okay.
and I think it started really getting to him because he was an entertainer and he'd like to be the center of attention.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
So let's talk about acceptance. How was that for you? What?
oh, I was hurt. Like
Yeah.
I was hurt because I'm a person of my word.
Mm-hmm.
If I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And when I find that greed and other people using you to get their dreams or
Right.
or get what they want,
Right.
it doesn't feel good.
Right.
Especially when I'm all about let's make this happen for both parties.
Yeah.
And I still don't understand why people don't say, okay, we can both be successful at this.
Yeah. Usually backfires for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, it usually
But
does.
yeah, but you're right. There are people who just. I think you fall in two camps. There are the people who always want the entire group to thrive and grow and,
Right.
and be successful, and then the people who are really just all about themselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not easy to detect that, although you did have some red flags. But
Yeah, and at the time, because I didn't have the funds to fund myself,
yeah.
I almost didn't have a choice. I mean, I had a choice. I could have walked away, but it led me to where I'm at today. So I'm still thankful for that.
Right.
But
Right.
but also that relationship has been severed and probably will never be repaired.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's another whole topic that I think is really interesting that we can get into is because we were talking about when life gives you lemons, and that's definitely when a business partnership falls apart like that, and there's some serious emotional and psychological issues that,
Right.
that happen with that. It's really devastating. But I hear it a lot. I heard it today in the workshop. I have friends
Right.
who've been through it. So it's a worthwhile topic to think about how to, do you need a business partner, how to choose a business partner,
Right.
and just some of the things. Do you have partners now?
I do, but I definitely will not move forward if they request or require them owning 51%. I will always, like I said, unless somebody offers me a lot of money for
Yeah.
the company, I will always have 51%. Always.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, very good. And it kind of seems obvious, but it's not necessarily. You can get caught up, just like in any relationship, and you get kind of caught up in the friendship or the
Right.
relationship itself and not make the best business decisions sometimes.
Oh yeah. And sometimes, like I said, when it's friendly, you
Yeah.
never expect. I mean, if any relationship,
Yeah.
you never expect it to go bad or hope it doesn't go bad.
Right.
And when you're in a good spot, you don't think about it. But when people
Yeah.
again they start seeing opportunity, and then they want to,
Yeah.
they want to get the glory of it.
Right.
So-
Yeah, it's interesting, and it makes me think too. My father-in-law had something like that happen, and he was in partnership with some people with some real estate, and he didn't know it, but he was really being ripped off for quite a while by a pretty close friend.
See.
And in the end, when it was all found out and everything, he continued, maybe not right at the beginning of the end, but he went back to being friends with this person.
Wow.
And which I don't hear very often. And I mean, not really close friends, but
Right.
it wasn't like they wouldn't speak on the street. They would be at a common dinner or something, and it would be okay.
Right.
Which everybody was kind of astounded by that. And, even people in the family were just kind of like, wow, you should be more mad at him.
Right.
And, but for him, it was kind of the only way that he could accept the situation was to move past it and say, that was really unfortunate, but he wasn't going to harbor a lot of anger and resentment and, whatever
I
else.
get where you can move on. I mean, I can get where maybe even forgive, but definitely you don't forget.
Yeah.
it's funny when you grow older and you're like, God, and there's certain parts about your parents you're like, I love the qualities that I've picked up from my parents, but then there's some things I don't want to make the same mistakes my parents did, which I kind of did. My dad did the same thing. He sold his business to a friend of his and co-signed for it.
Wow. Okay.
And
how did that go?
Well, 2 years later, the banker comes to my dad and said the guy hasn't paid in a year.
Oh.
And so you're going to have to either pay it and so my dad ended up paying it and having to take it back over and then reselling it. But, he lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Because the guy ended up taking more out than what it was worth.
It is interesting when you start thinking about it because, now my mind is spinning and it's like, wow, there are a lot of people that I know who've been through this.
Yeah.
So what's the bounce back strategy? Like, what did you do after this happened?
I mean, when I opened another one, I did go into another partnership.
Okay.
Even though I had some money to bring into it, but I did go into another partnership and definitely made sure that, that the quality was there. Not that I was going to. In fact, what it was is we took 40%, 40%. We saved 20% for potential sale.
Oh, interesting.
And it worked. And then when she ended up selling, because she retired after 3 years, or wanted to go, and so we bought her out, and then I took over the 51%. Because once I said she was gone, I didn't want somebody else to come in and try to purchase the rest of that.
Very
Again,
interesting.
But I've learned a lot working with investors. It's if they're not, and I don't know, maybe you've heard this before, if they're not up to the industry that they're investing in. I mean, if you're just like investing from Wall Street in a publicly trade, it's different because you're like, okay, I'm putting my money in, hoping for the best,
right?
And you don't really think about it until you get. But when it's a small private company, and it's investors are more accessible to you,
right.
I've learned that that's not always good either because everybody has their own opinion. How are you running it?
Right.
When do I get to see a return? Blah 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 blah. And so that for me, I've learned a lesson from that. So I've learned lessons from both.
Right.
Of saying, okay, too many chefs in the kitchen. I always say too many chefs in the kitchen. Nobody wants to cook but one. Yeah. It's tough. So
it's good. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. And so, what are some of the advantages of having partners in your business?
Oh, definitely. I mean,
because a lot of people would say too, I'm just never going there. I mean,
the advantages is less money from your pocket. If they're more active, it's less pressure on running everything every day to day, because again, there's some investors and then there's some partners, the partners that are more interested in daily activity, and then the investors, some of them are just like, here's my money, make me money.
Okay.
But I definitely think there's advantages to it, especially if somebody else brings something that you lack.
Yeah, that's a huge advantage.
And for me, and I've learned. It took me a while. I was a person that's like, oh, I have to do everything, because I'm the only one that can do it right. Da 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 da. But then when I got to where I was growing bigger, I was like, I can do everything.
Yeah, that's a mindset that you almost have to.
It took me a while.
Eliminate, because I think we all feel that way, and we probably are really good at what we do, but can nobody help us? That's usually not the case, but it feels that way.
It feels that way. I mean, they all say, oh, it's hard to find good help. But the problem is when you do it your way, doesn't mean it's always the right way.
Yeah. And you can't see past your own knowledge base, really.
Right. So for me, I mean, there are advantages I think it's also having a great person when you have a great communication, and that's huge. So people that are partners that are open and to communicating differences and growth, then that's an advantage too.
Yeah, I was going to ask about with your first experience, did you have regular meetings and regular communication? Because it seems like you can eliminate some of the issues if you're regularly having.
Well, I mean, we had executive board meetings on a regular basis when it comes to because I had several investors. Several investors. So, but when we had the executive board meetings were more often where everybody, it was more like yearly. Because honestly, they didn't really need to know the daily business. Yeah, very interesting. So, anything else that you learned from that experience about how to choose a partner? Would you choose a partner who's a friend, or would you avoid that altogether? I'm trying to avoid it altogether. I'm not saying that friendships don't work in partnerships, but my experience has not worked. Because it's turned out that friendships.
That's when it really hurts.
Yeah, and I think the like partnerships that I have now are people I don't know. I mean, I've they have their own business and working. What they have, I don't have. What I have, they don't have. So that's I think is going to be a better partnership.
So it's about business. It's not about the two of you being kind of copacetic and really enjoying each other's company as much. As
Yeah. And it's not saying that you can't become friends or friendly, but it's more this is our goal together is growing the company and not just
That's a really good point, because when you get in partnership with somebody, it really is important to figure out what is the goal. And are we in sync with that? And, is it working for both of us? And all those discussions, because it is kind of like a marriage in some ways.
Yeah. So. It's totally like a marriage. And I mean, even my husband at home, he always says, he gets on me because he's like, you go to work not to be friends. I mean, because he's from Brazil, so they're very.
So in his opinion, when you go to work, it's not about friendship. It's I got it. Okay, interesting.
Right, and it's all of. He's like, you're there for a reason to do a business, to create the business, make it successful as much as it can, and he goes, friendship can come last.
That's really interesting.
I've always been opposite, but I'm trying to be more balanced at that. Yeah.
I just find it interesting from a cultural perspective, because I almost think that Americans would be more that way, but kind of not.
He was. I was surprised how I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. But he's like, he goes, this is not about friendship. This is about work, getting things done. And I'm just like, okay.
Well, probably smart.
Definitely smart. But But like I said, I love working with people. I'm a team, but I also can be very individual too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay. So, I found this morning, a lot of discussion about, kind of life hitting you in the face and things changing. And so I know you just actually, well, obviously I know, I'm sitting here with you, but you moved from one location to another, which was kind of a big deal. And you actually rebranded and changed the whole company. And that wasn't like something you'd planned.
No. But I thought it was for the best.
Yeah, and you seem to just roll with it, so I don't think it threw you off your game too much.
I'm a person that I love change.
Okay, there you go.
If I sit idle too long, I get bored with it. Yeah. And so, but I love change. I love not necessarily locations, but changing the locations, even a name or something that's always going to make something better. I've always been that way. But also with a partnership, it's harder just to do it and then not being aware of it. So I'm very aware of that too. Respecting that.
That's a great comment though, because that was it makes a huge difference. Whatever your mindset is around change is huge, because there are people who change this really upsets them and they don't like it and they don't, they had a plan and when the plan doesn't happen. And I think that's where people get caught up in that whole, the issues that ensue from life giving you lemons, which it's going to. It's just part of it. There are always going to be some lemons falling from the sky. So, but enjoying change, seeing that with a positive mindset is so huge. And I kind of feel the same way. I mean, without change, I get a little bored too. There are changes that come along that I didn't necessarily care to make, but you do anyway. But I still always feel kind of like there's a new adventure around the corner, and whatever's coming, it'll be different. And you'll lose some things, but you don't really know until you get into it, the cool things that are going to happen. So I think...
No, I think change is always good. It's...
Well, people would say change is growth, basically. Like, if you're not changing, you're...
I was even as a kid, I was like that. I was
me too. Yeah.
Where, a lot of people, I grew up with the same hometown. I grew up in a town of 300 people in Kansas.
Oh, wow.
Some of those people I grew up with, they live in the same house, they drive the same car, they barely go anywhere, and you're just like, oh my gosh, it's like...
Yeah, that always sounded kind of like death to me, but to some people it's perfect. Some people it's what they want.
Some people it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I think being able to handle change is huge for an entrepreneur because, it's huge for anybody in this day and age, particularly. Right. That was something we talked about this morning, too, was, people change their jobs an average of 15 times in their life now. So it's not like
it is true.
Nothing's going to necessarily be your lifelong.
I remember my parents always said, get a job, stick with it. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that for 50, 30 years or 40 years working at the same job. I just never, ever was like that. Ever was like that.
No, I agree. It just never worked for me either on any level with anything really, but didn't want to get married till I was really late or old too, because that didn't sound so great either. Right. So you've got some pretty good work experience now. And so what would you say in addition to that about kind of overcoming some of the obstacles that hit like that? Do you get right back on the horse, or did you? I mean, when that happened to you with your partner earlier, did you?
The first one I did. The first one I'm a person when somebody tells me I can't do something, I'm like, oh, really? I mean, I've always been kind of a shy guy, but when somebody told me I couldn't do something, it really just
got you going.
Yeah, it was like putting fuel on a fire, and I would it's like a proving something. And then, but the second time around, after my first, or the woman retired, and we brought some new investors in. There was a situation where it got too much to where I almost said I've had enough. But I had people around me that wouldn't let me to do it.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, I think I've had enough. I'm ready to move on. It's I put too much time and effort and energy to let somebody else destroy it. So I was just like, I'm done. So, and then they were like, nope. Because I'm a person, when I make my decision, I'm done.
Okay.
Any relationship, I'm just like, okay, I'm done. But they were like, no. And so it kept me going.
That probably comes from being okay with change too, because it doesn't scare you that much. So it's like you can be done with things because you're not that afraid.
Right. Yeah. But when you get married, it changes you.
Yeah.
I mean, it changes your decisions. But there was like, no, you're not going to let this go. So again, that's why I'm still here doing what I'm doing, and
Are you thankful that they made you?
Yeah.
Stay?
No, I'm thankful. Like I said, that was one of the reasons I rebranded anyway, because I was like, okay, if I'm going to continue, I'm going to change some things up and do it as old Blue Eye himself. Do it my way.
That's great. Yeah, and that's another important thing for people to remember. You do have to do it your way, and that's if you don't do it your way, you're going to end up most likely pretty unhappy in whatever you're doing.
My thing is if you own a company and own a business, when you start feeling like it owns you, I don't see why you would even want to stay.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's when a lot of people feel like, things start going in a negative direction. And then people start feeling like life is giving them lemons, but actually, they kind of did it to themselves.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that because sometimes that can be offensive to people, but I do see decisions that people are making, in their businesses that it's like, oh my gosh, you're just making decision after decision that is where it's making it hard for you.
Right.
You're making your own life so hard
Right.
with these decisions you're making. And
Yeah.
so it's not always life giving it to you. Sometimes you're creating that, on your own with the decisions you're making.
And no, I'm the same way. There's still things that I know I don't make the greatest decisions. I mean, that's but what's weird is when I know I don't make the best decisions and then other people try to make decisions for you, you hate it. So I'm like, how do I balance that out?
Yeah. And sometimes it's just making decisions and getting those other opinions too it is always good to get a different perspective, which is what you got when you were thinking of giving it up. And those new perspectives can be really helpful.
What do you think about having mentors for every aspect of your life?
Well, I do it, so I must like it. I think it's really important. And I do think I didn't do it early on. I mean, I was very much about doing everything myself. I can do it. And I hear that from my daughter now, and it just kills me. I don't need anything. I don't need anybody. And can you make it that way without them? Sure. But it's painful. It takes longer.
Right.
You still miss opportunities, I think, because mentors help you see opportunities for things that you wouldn't see, or they help you see what you're missing, whether it's in working out or business or whatever. I just think it's crucial. I wish I'd known early on how important it was.
Do you think it's ever too late?
No, I think it's never too late. I mean, as you know, you can go to the gym at 80 and build some muscle if you have the right trainer. No, I think it's definitely never too late. I was actually, I have several mentors, but there was something that came up the other day, and there are some things too that we teach other people. We know we would, if we were in an advisory situation, we would tell somebody something that we aren't necessarily doing for ourselves. And I think mentors are great about pointing that out too and saying, okay, you need to create this business model or whatever it is. Right. And you're moving along, things are happening, and sometimes you're forgetting to do some of the things that you need to do, or you don't want to do them, and so you're not doing them. And you need people to remind you. You need people to help you see outside of your perspective. You just can't see it yourself. So. And
I'll admit that sometimes I'm like that. Like I said, I'm starting to admit more and more that there's things that I lack in business skills. And I'm just not like certain things. I'm a great at I'm not good at the office work.
Sure. You can't be good at everything. I mean, you're in a business, and I was asked this morning about, we were talking about life purpose and loving what you do and being, kind of working in your passion and your strengths and things like that. And so somebody asked me if, about the change I made 10 years ago going into coaching and if I loved it. And I said, yes, I do love it. I feel like when I'm working with clients, I could do it, all day long. It doesn't feel like work. I love it. That said, I'm also running a business. So I have other things that I have to do that I don't love as much. There's the marketing and the admin and certain things, crazy technical stuff that you do that I don't know how to do. And so are you going to love all of it? No, but the core essence of what you're doing, I think,
because I like I said, I do things that there's things that I don't like, but I can do, but there's things that I just don't know how to do.
Yeah. And I think you're better off letting go of the things that either you don't do really well or you really dislike, because, again, you can quantify it if you want and figure, how much is your time worth, and would it be better to hire a $20 an hour bookkeeper, or is it better to have you doing that? I mean, where should your hours be spent? And even cost wise, it makes sense to delegate and to give those things away to people.
Wow.
So
is there a difference between life coach and mentor? to you?
Yeah, there's some difference between all of it. It's like I
'Cause
have
I hear
all
people all
the
the time.
definitions.
California has become this big. Everything's a life coach, and I was just like, "What's the
I
difference
don't
between all?"
like the term life coach. I've never liked it, and people will sometimes call me a life coach, and I'll admit that when you start coaching with somebody, I mean, it's a holistic process. The whole life comes
Right.
in. You might be coaching them around work, but they're having relationship issues
Right.
that are impacting their ability to work. So
Right.
it's all mixed up. But I still think life coach is such a broad. I mean, I guess in theory, you go to a life coach to work on anything, which coaching is great. Coaching is a lot about asking questions that help you
Right.
bring up the answers yourself. So you can see how that could work. But I do think there are specialty areas, I mean, if I really want to work on my health, I'm probably going to look not for so much of a life coach, but more of a health coach. And the
Right.
life coach could help me. They could help me get to a point where I could run a marathon or something. But, I think it's nice to target certain, I work
Yeah.
with a business coach on my business.
Yeah.
I don't really ask my business coach to help me with other aspects
Right.
of my life, although
Right.
they come up, so.
It's like, help me with my fashion.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Yeah, there are those fashion coaches too. There's a coach for everything. But, and mentors, there's a little difference, I think, between coaching and mentoring, because mentoring is very much kind of a sounding board and somebody to kind of guide you. Coaching has some aspects to it of accountability and things like that, where
Right.
they kind of like, what are you going to do by, next Tuesday? And there's some subtle differences
Right.
between, there are big differences between therapists and coaches. Therapists really kind of are focused on past events and
Right.
and getting you kind of over some of what's happened to you in the past. And coaches are very much forward thinking.
Yeah.
Like,
Now,
it's-
get it done. It's-
yeah, and you don't ignore the past, but the focus is on where do you want to go and how are we going to get there,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing. So,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
yeah.
I always
so
wondered because like you hear it, the different, and you're like, what is the difference?
There's so many terms out there.
know,
It's crazy.
I
People have
know.
actually told me, stop using the term coaching because there's so much coaching going on that people are just kind of
Well,
confused by it.
yeah, it does get confusing after a while.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I
So.
didn't mean to get you off topic.
Oh,
there.
no, that's fine. I like to get off topic. So do you have coaches and mentors here?
I don't. I mean, other than like I said, the new partners, they know the industry of entertainment, which
Right.
they can be kind of a mentorish.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they've seen it, they've done it. Where
Right.
the podcasting streaming is one element of entertainment. They've pretty much have been from one being on Wall Street and financial and the entertainment side of financing,
Right.
and then the other one actually production. So
Cool.
it's so that's the
Those
biggest.
sound like good people to have on
Yeah.
your team
Yeah, of
because they can
course.
help you grow. And I think that's what the mentors can, especially if they're if they know an industry really well.
Right. Yeah, and they know I've seen him work like talk to talk when it comes to sitting down with an executive
Right.
in entertainment, and you're like, wow, I would have been just like, hey, buddy, let's talk. But knowing the terminology and how to talk to the people in entertainment, makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's great.
Huge difference. Yeah.
So, I think the other little piece of this is when life does give you lemons, it's a really great opportunity to kind of reinvent and rethink. And so, but that's a little bit of a process. And it sounds like you just went through this where you,
Oh, yeah.
you
Oh,
were
yeah.
kind of at the end of your rope. And so you rethought it and you came up with kind of a new way to do things.
Right.
And so I do think those points are so good. And it is worthwhile to take the time to really say, okay, what was working, what did I like, what did I not like, and how am I going to
Yeah.
expand and change. And I have some questions actually about just kind of discovering your life purpose, because I do think that that's a great point at which, although, you might be in kind of a negative headspace when
Right.
that happens, when you
Right.
kind of can pull yourself out. And sometimes it's easier to pull yourself out too if you start thinking about, okay, where can I go from here? And so I'm just going to see, just because it's fun, I'll ask the questions, and people listening hopefully can hear these questions and take them in as well and answer them for yourselves. But I'll ask you, Tony.
Sure.
So what do you love to do? These are just a series of questions that are great for helping you to kind of clarify your life purpose. So, what do you love to do, like whether it's in your spare time or work?
Just entertainment purpose or business purpose, doesn't matter.
Kind of doesn't matter.
What's funny is my favorite thing to do. My favorite thing to do is get in the car, and I just drive to places I've never. No, I don't even know where I'm going.
Oh, I
I
love
just
that.
drive, and then I see. Oh, I want to stop there. I will stop because most people don't take the time to do that.
Yeah.
And I've in California, you know, there's tons of things to see. I've learned so much and seen so much of just jumping in the car for a day,
Yeah.
filling the tank up, driving, don't know which direction, stopping at new places to eat, you know, museums or just mom and pop shop that's historically, anything. And so for me, I just love to explore. I love that exploring feeling.
That's great. And see, this is what you can do with that kind of information is you can see, okay, well, you actually drilled down to figuring out that you just love exploring. And so how can you incorporate that into your work life, which I think you can easily do in this environment because it's so creative and open-ended and, you know, you can explore all kinds of things. But I love that. I did that this weekend for the first time in a really long time. I went on a road trip up to Cambria with some friends, and it was so great. And we did that. We had the time to just see a town, go in it, and find a cool place, you know. And I thought, gosh, why don't I do this more? It's so great, you know. It just felt so free.
That's the word, free. Just like.
And you'll make weird discoveries that are just, you know, it's so cool that it reminds you that you should do it more. So
yeah, my husband does it. He's not that type of a person, but that's how we met. That's how we started enjoying each other. And multiple times he's like, you know, when we first went to this place, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go in there, and then I end up loving it. Yeah. So yeah, he loves to like explore now with me.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. So, what parts of your present job or life activities do you thoroughly enjoy?
Discovering new ideas, new, you know, conversations that people talk about. Even just like this, like just having conversations and hearing other people's, because, you know, we have several shows here on. Right. So I get to hear a lot of, and meeting amazing amount of people that I would have met before, and opening my mind and ideas to other elements that I never would have thought of.
Yeah, so you're another version of exploring, really. Yeah, that's really cool. What do you naturally do well? Again, we're asking Tony these questions.
Right.
But you can ask yourself these questions.
What I do well is one thing that I like to see both sides of. I think that's why I do well with my own show. It's I listen to people and I see both sides of what they're explaining. Okay. I with no judgment, but I'm a person. I do well is when I get an idea, I make it happen. Yeah. I know I don't know how long it'll take me, but I figure out ways to make it happen.
That's great. That's a big confidence.
Because I heard a guy tell me that once. He goes, I remember when you first started your radio show, and like you did about a year, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to start my own network. And he goes, in this town, I've heard it 100,000 times of people starting whatever. And he goes, but you actually did it. Like you lived up to what you said. Right. And that's when I say I'm going to go to Paris or whatever, it may take me a while, but I do end up doing it.
Okay. So yeah, that's definitely a talent. There's a lot of people will think about things and just, you know, they're not such great action takers. So that is a great strength. Well, this is a big question, so I'm going to narrow it down. But what are your 10 greatest successes to date? You don't have to do 10, but a few of your best successes, you think? Could be anything. Yeah,
it could be anything. Always keeping a great relationship with my mother. That's a big accomplishment for me. Opening my own business it took me 20 years, you know, since I was a kid, when I'm early 40s, so actually probably longer than that, when I said I'm going to open my own business. I just didn't know when, where, why, who, how.
Cool.
So, and then, you know, and also, you know, I personally, you know, again, doing a natural bodybuilding and placing, being an All-American in college and track. I mean, like I said, most of the things I put my mind to, I accomplish it. I have to be really passionate about it. But yeah, 10, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, we can stop there, but that's great.
Yeah.
Those are big, actually, in various life areas. So I think that's important for people to hear, that a success can be in any area. So it isn't all about business and money and career.
Yeah.
Because everything transfers over. You have a success in your sport or your ability to work out. That is going to have a huge impact on whether you're successful in your business, because it all transfers.
Oh my gosh, it gives you accountability, work ethic, when it comes to sports, and I think it does. Sports are, to me, the best analogies for business are in the sports area. What are some, again, it was 10, but let's not do 10. Let's do 3. 3 important lessons you've learned in your life. Oh my goodness. That list could be 100.
I know.
Always go with your gut feeling.
Good one.
Always listen to your gut, because that's when I don't, I always pay the price.
And you could have listened to your gut maybe more the first time around with that one partner.
Oh, yeah. My gut was saying don't do it.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, but I did it. Like I said, every time I go against that, I always pay the price.
Okay.
Always pay the price. Listen.
Okay.
I think a lot of people don't realize that I do have a lot to say. I don't say a lot, but I listen, because I catch people in their own lies by just letting them talk.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, good.
I mean, yeah, I was going to say something else, but and then also, just be kind. I mean, be kind, but be strong.
Yeah.
Be kind and just be strong, meaning that be kind to people, be kind to environment, whatever, but also be strong. Don't let people walk over you.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything that has been kind of an issue or a perceived problem that has happened over and over again, like you've seen it recur?
Sometimes I'm too nice.
Okay.
When it comes to me, like I let things slide too much.
So maybe boundaries, or
boundaries, yeah, setting boundaries, and that would be one that I've learned, but I'm still working on that one.
Yeah, I am too. That's a hard one. I guess we're
that's
just gonna
tough.
work on it forever. It's never gonna. It's happening.
Yeah.
I feel it, but I don't
tough.
feel like I could let my guard down. I'd slip back into.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
I'll be like, here I go again.
And what do you daydream about doing?
Daydream. What do I daydream? I still daydream about having the financial freedom to create, not just for here. I mean, to create multiple businesses that benefit not just myself, but environmental, other people's dreams.
Cool.
Yeah, stuff like that. I want to give back, but to only those people that really are willing to do it themselves, but with the help of others.
Nice.
Because there's a lot of people that will just let you do it for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Thanks.
Okay. Because I like people. I asked this question. I think a lot of people think, oh, well, what difference does it make what I daydream about? Like, that's not going to happen. But it's so important.
That's what keeps you going.
Yeah, and it really puts it out there into the universe or whatever. These bigger ideas that you have that you don't want to squelch those just because it might be a daydream and you can't figure out how you could do it right now.
Right.
You got to have it out there as kind of like a guiding light to.
I couldn't imagine not daydreaming or dreaming about something bigger and better. I just don't. Then you're pretty much dead.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people will keep themselves from ever really having the life they want because they're afraid to do that.
Or they'll say, what's the point? It's not going to happen anyway.
That's what I mean. It's like they're anticipating a disappointment, so they don't even go there.
Yeah.
So
not to say I haven't done that.
Well, I think we all have, but I think the reason, I think it's a good reminder though to pay attention to those daydreams because people will dismiss them, and it means something to you. It really would be something that would drive you.
Right.
And we need those too.
And my daydreams is actually what kept me going as a child. I mean, it was a tough childhood. So I mean, daydreams is actually what kept me going.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of value in those.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, important. Okay, that's great. And what would you like to be remembered for at the end of your life?
Just that I was a good man.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, I don't need a statue. I don't need but just that I was a good man for the people that did know me.
I love that. Okay. And what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Last question.
Oh my gosh, anything, everything.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's I love the energy of just like you just looked at me like, oh my God, if I couldn't fail, I would never stop. You know?
I
So
mean, I wouldn't just do one thing. I'd do everything.
okay, that's
Yeah.
good. Well, so those are the kind of questions you can ask yourself when you're trying to figure out, what's my life purpose? Where do I want to go? And to really think big about your life. And especially if you've had something that happened that maybe took you down a bit, if you start asking yourself those questions, you can start dreaming again. You can start thinking big again, and you can start kind of resurrecting yourself and get back, in the game in a really positive way. And it might, because you're, kind of in that mindset where something bad just happened, you've got to switch that. You've got to regain the confidence that you can have something bigger and better. And so kind of focusing on that purpose first before you start putting together the business model and figuring that out and finding the partners. Really important to have that light that can draw you toward it so that you can create the new you. So, okay, well, I am so glad you talked to me today.
No,
this is
you
so
for
fun.
including me.
I knew you were going to be running things, but I didn't know I'd actually get a chance to talk to you. So this is really fun. Will you tell people about your show for me?
Oh, yeah. So my show's a little different than what you do, but it's called Truth Be Told. It's a paranormal, UFO, conspiracy theory, historical events, figures. And it's you can just go to our YouTube channel, Truth Be Told, and you'll find it there. It's it looks like a big alien eye with pyramids.
It's a very cool logo. Yeah, that's great. And my daughter's kind of turned me on to conspiracy theories lately. She loves them.
Oh yeah.
So I need to. I've never watched those shows, but now I am, and I'll have to. Let her know about yours as well.
Please do.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tony, and thank you, listeners. And please join us Wednesday at 1 o'clock at ubn.com. Or recheck, ubngo.com. Okay. All right. Have a great week.